Hi, and welcome to Emotional Intelligence. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm really excited to share some of this information with you. So we've only got an hour, and so to fit emotional intelligence into an hour, I just want everyone to really understand that this is, I guess, a good taster, because an hour of emotional intelligence is going to give you some insights. It's going to give you some ideas that you can develop further. It's also going to, I guess, expand your thinking around what you currently do. Now, why is emotional intelligence important? Emotional intelligence can be used in every aspect of our life, every aspect, whether it be our personal life, our career, dealing with clients, overcoming adversity, becoming more resilient. Like, there's so many reasons we want to develop our emotional intelligence, because when we start to develop these skills, we have a greater sense of freedom, because we understand that we're in control of our emotions. We are in control of how we respond, and we're also in control of more in respect to what we want to change. And so I want to run through some ideas with you and give you some, I guess, thought processes around how this can be implemented. Now, when it comes to an area of this hour that you go, oh, wow, I need to write some notes, make sure you listen to the replay, because then you can pause it, write the notes, because that will get your thinking processes, developing ideas for yourself. So it's always good to save it and replay it later. So I want to start with, um, you know, the why of emotional intelligence can be around, is it a good GPS for life, right? We put I guess, GPS coordinates into a map, Google Maps, whatever it might be, so that we can get to where we want to go. Now, if you think about emotional intelligence from that perspective, emotional intelligence can be a really good GPS for ourselves, because we have a direction that we want to go. And as we increase our emotional intelligence, that GPS inside us that's saying, hey, something's not right here, or this is feeling great, I'm on the right path, that helps you stay focused, and it helps you move the course. Like, if you were navigating in the wrong direction, you change the map in the GPS. Well, you can change the map in yourself, and using really good tools, you're able to change that map at any time. So think about that. It's your GPS for life. Also in work. Now, whether you are in a job, or whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you're starting out in a new career, or you'd like to go into a new career, think about emotional intelligence and how you relate to people. So as you increase your emotional intelligence, you're going to relate to people in a much deeper way. You're going to be more aware of yourself and triggers. You're going to be more aware of your values and beliefs, and how that integrates into a workplace, or how that integrates into your career path as an entrepreneur. What kind of clients do you want? How can you reach more clients? How can you connect with people on a deeper level? Now, in life in general, I've used emotional intelligence um, in ways that would take me all week to explain. But in my personal, intimate life with a partner, I use it with my children all the time, especially as adults. I use it in friendships, understanding emotional intelligence. When you have connections with friends, you can be better aware of how you're relating with your friends, how you're having really deep, authentic conversations, or whether you're just kind of sitting around the surface of conversations you'd like to have. Your emotional intelligence can allow you to have much deeper conversations. And then with just simply looking at greater connection. And I'll give the example, because I know I'm talking to a lot of coaches, and if you want to have greater connection with your clients, if you increase your emotional intelligence, you will be able to connect with them on a much deeper level, and much faster than you ever have before. So there's some areas that I hope I've touched on for you, and just think about that and jot down some ideas around wanting to connect with clients at a much deeper level. So today we're going to run through the 5 key pillars of emotional intelligence, and also move into where that leads to emotional competence, and in fact will lead to mastery. So when you look at emotional intelligence, if you want to read more, then there's plenty of books working with emotional intelligence. Daniel Goleman, where emotional intelligence was developed from. You can do some research around that, because there's some great quizzes that you can do that will be able to help you understand your current level of emotional intelligence, which is just a guide. And I think our emotional intelligence is greater when we're more aware, which leads us into here. One of the pillars is self-awareness. So having that self-awareness is important to understand what's going on for me. Now, if you think of some ideas around where you may have had to deal with a difficult situation, how is your self-awareness then? When you're dealing with other people, you've got to understand yourself before you can understand where others are sitting on that scale. So understanding your emotions, how do you do that? Well, when something happens, you'll get a feeling inside. Something difficult might be going on for you, and you go, oh, that doesn't feel so good. It might be sitting around your stomach, it might be sitting in your heart, it might be sitting in your throat, your head might race. There's lots of different things. You have to understand what that is for you when you're triggered. So a trigger is generally your values and beliefs being challenged. So if I'm being triggered, I'm telling a story. And that story can be around, they don't like me, they don't like what I've said, I've upset someone. The story is endless. Whatever the story is for you, if there's a story and there's an uncomfortable feeling, then you've got to go into self-awareness and you have to assess, what is the story that I'm telling myself? And one of the questions you need to start asking is it true? So I was delivering a course to some clients, and we spoke about taking 100% responsibility. And a lot of people struggle, sorry about my words there, but struggle with the concept of taking 100% responsibility. And I give a very simple analogy for that. Imagine Bob is there and I say, Bob made me angry, or Bob made me sad, or Bob made me cry. That might be Jill. It doesn't really matter. I'm not taking responsibility for my own emotions. Now, if you think about that on a scale of, if I don't own my emotions, I'm leaving my happiness. Just simply look at happiness. I'm leaving my happiness up to somebody else. So if I leave my happiness up to them, can't they take it away? So think about that for a minute. If I rely on someone else or something external to myself to make me happy, that can be taken away. So if I'm 100% responsible for my happiness, or I'm 100% responsible for any other emotion that I have the ability to actually change it. So I can't change something I can't see. So meaning someone else is responsible, I can't see it, therefore I can't change it, and I don't have control. I would rather have 100% responsibility, because then I have the opportunity to change that. So that's something just to note for yourself, is just look at the rule of 100%. If I'm 100% responsible, I can change that. I can become self-aware about what's going on for me. Therefore, I can ask myself a question, and a simple question. There's plenty of questions you can ask, but one question is it true? Now, when I start asking that question, is it true? I think about the story that I'm telling, and then I've got to go, is that story true? Or is that me running a story and I'm triggered by something, therefore I'm adding emotion into it? And generally, that can be our values and beliefs that have been challenged. Therefore, we go, oh, that's not true. Okay, so just think about when I become more self-aware, I'm going to have a greater physical awareness and a conscious awareness of what's going on for me. Then I can self-manage. Now, what does it mean to self-manage? So if I want to self-manage something, an emotion, a reaction, or to not react, then I have the choice, because I can go, what do I need to do right now? Do I need to take a step back and have some space? Do I need to ask myself if this is true? If the answer is no, it's not true, where's this story coming from? And so I want to give you an example of if you're in a workplace and how questions and conversations are really important. And especially if I'm the manager, there's plenty of self-management tools. Because I've been really immersed in emotional intelligence for a very long time, I can pick up other people's triggers, and I can pick up other people's reactions and their body language and so forth fairly quickly when I'm being aware. So if I was having a discussion that can be what I called an authentic conversation or a courageous conversation, sometimes those difficult conversations need to be had, but you've got to be sensitive about having them. And so I can be having a challenging conversation. I can see someone's getting a bit flustered or upset or not coping, and I'll see that in their body language, their eye patterns. There's lots of other things that I can see, and I can go, hey, this conversation is going okay, but I'm happy if you want to take a break. Or would you like some time and we can finish this discussion later? Would that be okay for you? So would that be okay for you is permission-based communication, where I'm not giving away the decisions. I'm saying, hey, I'd like you to make some decisions and contribute to this, because, you know, at the end of the day, when I'm speaking with someone, I want a win-win. This is not about a person winning or losing. This is about a win-win. We have to have this conversation. It's really important to have. However, I can see that it's not going the way it needs to go, so that we can actually communicate effectively. So I'm going to say to the person, would you like to pick this up again later? Would that be okay with you? I'm going to get their response, and their response can be, no, I'm happy to continue now. Okay, no problem. Let's keep going. We'll work through this. Or they can go, yeah, I'd rather pick this up again in the morning. No worries at all. What time's good for you? So me having awareness and being able to self-manage, I can actually then have those conversations and we can pick up where we need to pick up. Okay. Now, when we look at self-management, you have to understand where you're going and what you want the end result to be. So in any kind of perceived conflict or a hard conversation, courageous conversation, what do you want the end result to be? If you don't know the end result, you shouldn't be continuing the conversation. You should know the end result. What do I want from this conversation? Do I want to be heard? Do I want them to understand? Do I want them to hear how I'm feeling and understand how I'm feeling? And that's not always possible, because someone who doesn't have the emotional intelligence to understand that may not be able to get to where you want to go. And you've got to be aware of that. You can't force that on someone. So again, this is where you've got to use your emotional intelligence to understand, am I pushing the conversation too far? Are emotions getting triggered further? Are we able to then pick this up later? Okay, so let's move on to motivation. Now, when you have developed emotional intelligence to a degree, you understand motivation is actually important. Motivation is about us having a mission and a vision and the goal, the end goal that we want to get to, right? So when we can self-manage because, for example, there might be adversity but we still have to get something completed. We still have to contribute to a project, or we have to see clients on a regular basis. So we know what the end goal is. We know what our mission and vision is. Therefore, we have the motivation to do that. Now, in some cases for me, and these are really things that I've learned, they may not resonate with you, but if they do, then just see if you can expand on that. So motivation, for example, I know the end goal of where I want to get to, therefore I can compartmentalize things that I don't need to address now. I don't need to be distracted by these things that are not as important as the end goal. Okay, so think about, what is your motivation? What is your end goal? Where do you want to go? What direction? What does that look like? Think about it from the perspective of, can you really see it? Can you feel it? I often spoke about with my goals that I had in a past career, that I could feel it, I could taste it. And it was so in me that it drove everything that I did. Now, I know for a long time I hustled far too much and didn't allow things to naturally progress. And these days it's very different. I allow for that natural progression, but still working towards my mission, my vision, and not allowing things to distract me from that. I'm not perfect at it, but I'm certainly very self-aware and know when I'm distracted. I know when I'm procrastinating. It's interesting. I once said to a dear friend of mine, what's worse than procrastination? And that is procrastinating on your procrastination. So now an important next step is the empathy. So when we look at empathy, I would like to make it a very clear definition of sympathy and empathy, because I hear a lot of language around, oh, you poor thing, so that's very clearly sympathy, and empathy is a much greater tool. So when you can try and walk in someone else's shoes, try and understand, and I don't often use the word try. Anyone who knows me knows the chair analogy of trying to pick it up. But when you are having empathy, you can go, oh, okay, what must be going on for this person for them to react the way they are? Let me think about that for a minute. And I need to think from the perspective of the other person, not myself. One thing that's really important to understand is my level of what stress is completely different to another person. So my idea of stress is quite high, and I'm very resilient. However, someone could have some adverse event in their life, and it could be the loss of a job. It could be they didn't get the promotion. It could be a separation. It could be a divorce. There's lots of adverse situations that happen. And what you think is stressful to you may not be to them, or on the flip side of that, it may be catastrophic. So when you think about the other person, you can't assume their level of stress is the same as yours, or their level of resilience is the same as yours. I'm a bit tongue-tied today. I'm not sure what's going on. So with your empathy, at work, there's a very clear way when you see someone who seems to be very stressed. Is everything okay? Is there anything I can do to support you? And allowing that person to answer is really important, not answering for them. One of the things that I spoke to a group about yesterday was, don't offer advice freely. Ask them, would they like any support, assistance, advice, whatever it might be. I've been through something similar. Would you like to know what I did? And if they say no, it's your job not to take that personally and just go, no worries at all, but you know where I am, just reach out if you need to. So your language around the people that you're talking to is very important. because we freely offer advice, not even wondering whether the other person wants the advice. So that's something to think about. And then social skills. So looking at our social skills and cues, you know, we can become a much better socializer. We can become someone who can connect deeply with people. And then we have the ability to fit into different conversations and fit into different group dynamics. Okay. I've done networking and business building and sales and for a very, very long time. I think my father once said to me I could probably sell ice to Eskimos or something like that. I know he always said I can talk underwater, so I haven't given that a go, but I should. But what you want to do is think about your social skills and how you can develop those. But I can tell you, as you develop your emotional intelligence, every one of these skills will naturally evolve. And then you will develop that emotional competence. Now, it doesn't mean to say that you always get it right, but you want to find connections with people who are going to help you develop that emotional resiliency or that emotional intelligence that then, you know, other skills will naturally evolve from those. So a couple of things. Stephen Covey has a book called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And one of the things he says in there is seek to understand before you seek to be understood. So when we are becoming more emotionally intelligent, we actually become a better listener. Now, I want you to think for a minute, and if this is on the replay, it's a great time to pause and think about this question. Do you listen to understand, or are you listening to respond? So when you're really listening to someone, you are present, you're hearing what they have to say to understand it. Once you understand it, and if you're not someone who's understanding what they're saying straight away, reflect back what you're hearing. So what I hear you're saying is, or my understanding of what you've said is that correct once you've explained it? Because when we are present with someone, when we're giving them our attention, we're hearing what they have to say, we are able to understand and have a greater awareness and also develop that empathy, which again, greater connections. So you can see that under, you know, all of these pillars, you're going to have a greater connection. Now, the reason I say this is if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, or you look at the 6 human needs that Anthony Robbins talks about endlessly, you can see, and I'll just go through those because you have the certainty, uncertainty, variety, significance, love and connection, and then there's growth and contribution. We all need to have connection. We're human beings. We are meant to connect in some form. So as you develop emotional intelligence, you'll have a greater connection. A lot of other things will occur naturally through that. So what I want you to do is think about your level of emotional intelligence now. How self-aware are you? How well do you self-manage? What are your motivations? How motivated are you? What's your empathy like? And then can you develop further social skills? How social are you? Now, we're not going, this is not about being an introvert or extrovert. Social skills, if we have clients, we have to have those social skills. If we're an entrepreneur, we're developing relationships all the time. We have to be able to relate to different types of people in different cultures, in different generations. You know, there's a whole mix. And your clients will be, you know, very mixed in that sense. So ask yourself how well you are on doing on these on a scale of, you know, 1 to 5 or 1 to 10. And also I'll actually copy a a brief emotional intelligence test, which is just a guide. It's really just to guide you, to give you some ideas, because then you can go, well, maybe my self-awareness can increase. The important thing to do here is an action step or an action plan. It doesn't have to be big, just an action plan on how am I going to develop these skills. So again, I'd start with self-awareness. Always think about what's going on for you when something happens. Now, this isn't just when something negative happens. What lights you up? What do you do that makes you feel amazing? You know, how's that feel inside? When you're feeling challenged, what's going on for you? Develop that self-awareness. Oh, do I get sweaty palms? Is my heart palpitating a little bit? Am I distracted? Am I getting a bit sweaty? You know, what is it for you? What physically changes in your body? And maybe just keep a little diary of that so that you go, oh, okay, I get it. When I was feeling pressured, or when I was feeling challenged, or if I was feeling attacked. Okay, so what's important is to acknowledge how you're feeling, but you can still ask yourself the question of, is it true? So the story I'm telling myself is they were attacking me because they didn't like what I said. Is that true? Or is it that maybe I was challenging their values and beliefs and they felt attacked, therefore they attacked back? You know, so there's just little thought patterns to put in there and go, is it true? Maybe not. And if it is true, all right, how would I handle that situation differently? Okay. So starting with self-awareness, as you go through that, you then will have a better alarm system or a better trigger or whatever you want to call it to self-manage. Okay, previously I've reacted and it didn't serve me well. So this time I'm not going to react. Now, I use a really interesting tool for myself, which is again another question. So I ask myself a lot of questions. I'm naturally an overthinker. I know this, very aware of this. I'm never going to pretend, and haven't for a long time, that I'm not an overthinker, because I am. And that's okay, because I know how to self-manage that. So when I ask myself if it's true, if it is true, it's not about negative self-talk and beating myself up. It's actually about saying, okay, isn't that interesting? The same as if I don't feel good about how someone else is responding, instead of me putting an emotion to that, I can go, isn't that interesting? And then for me, there is no emotion. It's just interesting. My longtime mentor, Jim Rohn, a long time ago, taught me that, just finding things interesting. What we do find is when we attach right, wrong, good, bad, we attach emotion, because what we believe is right or what we believe is wrong is based on values and beliefs. If something's good or bad, again, that can add an emotion to it. If you get up late in the morning and then you spill your cup of coffee, sometimes self-talk for people who don't have high levels of emotional intelligence is, I'm going to have a bad day. So they will have a bad day. But if you can say, the alarm didn't go off and I spilt my cup of coffee, isn't that interesting? I don't have to then continue that bad day. All right, I can find it interesting, therefore diffusing the emotions, because, you know, anyone who is doing this kind of work knows, and I love my rock, and I'm not sure if it's going to come out the right way. I'll just actually, thoughts become things. So this rock is something I actually, and it's perfect size for my hand, but this is something that some days I actually carry around. In fact, this rock walked across Spain with me. So this rock walked over 1,000 kilometers with me in Spain last year, because thoughts become things. Now, if I just go into that further, reminding myself thoughts become things can help me keep motivated, right? So what am I going to think about? One, I'm defeated, this is just too hard. Or two, I've got this. Yep, this is hard, but one step at a time, I've got this. Thoughts become things, right? So I really encourage you to find something, whether it's a little stone or a stick or whatever it might be, to help you build these tools, because over time you will just naturally do that. But when we're creating a new habit, when we're developing skills, putting tools, and I call it my tool bag. A plumber has a tool bag. I have my own tool bag. My tool bag has books, it has thoughts, it has affirmations, it has meditations, it has phone numbers of people I can, phone a friend. So my tool bag allows me to keep developing that emotional intelligence, that resilience, that all of those kinds of things. So, all right. So again, pause the video when you're on replay and just write some notes for yourself and how you're going to develop these skills. Do some reading. I'll add some links into this as well. And I hope that that helps you start on the path to emotional competence and developing that to such a high level that it gives you a sense of freedom, because emotional intelligence actually does give you a sense of freedom, knowing that you own it 100% and no one else is in control of that. All right. So I'll leave it there. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you joining me, and I hope that I can answer any questions for you. You can direct message me, or we can have just a quick chat over Skype or something like that. So, all right, until next time, ciao for now.